Welcome to the Living Well with Mental Illness podcast, where we explore the journey of living a fulfilling life with mental health challenges. Join us for real and vulnerable conversations about the difficult realities of living with a mental illness. We'll discuss how to find acceptance, build resilience, and discover what recovery and living well means to you.
Do you have an idea of what it's like for me at bedtime when lights are out and
Is this it? You're starting.
this is the beginning of this podcast. Lights are out, we're laying in bed, and you start rustling with the blankets, and you come over to my side of the bed, and you wedge your leg underneath my leg.
Do I know what that's like now? Because you are untethered right now. Rob is tripping over everything in the studio. He's banging things off. Like he needs some grounding right now. And so I guess that's what we're going to get into is the ways in which you might need grounding for physical untetheredness, like Rob is currently experiencing, or sometimes for emotional and psychological untetheredness, which is what I often experience.
Yeah. So getting more into, I did a bit of research before this podcast, and I'll come back to it. But like one of the first things that came up was like electrical grounding to the earth as like there's some like scientific studies that are kind of underway in terms of the benefits of like people being like connected to the earth, like electrical grounding, like you're walking, on the earth, and how it potentially reduces inflammation or increases blood flow, that kind of thing.
Well, I think I believe that. I mean, there's got to be some reason why it's called grounding as a means of feeling more grounded. And I suppose we should get into what that actually means. But coming from the term of
electrical grounding.
Yeah.
Swimming in the ocean or water was another one too. But we're talking more about like, I think, emotional and psychological, and I guess even physical grounding here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what do you mean when you're saying grounding?
When I'm saying grounding?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was thinking about it. I was thinking about it a lot more in relation to you, but then I was also thinking about it in relation to my own experience. And, I think that I'm kind of an anxious person. Like when something's not going the way that I expect it to go, then I feel not great. When things are kind of out of my control, I don't want to say that I'm like a control freak or anything, but it's more like when expectations aren't lining up, then I feel this like anxiety, and sometimes I can't stop thinking about it. And I think for me, that would be kind of my definition of being ungrounded, is just, and I guess it kind of matches the actual definition, but just not really being in control of my thoughts, but also not in control of my emotions. But more for me, I think it's my thoughts.
I appreciate that you made that, connection between not feeling in control of your thoughts, because I think that's probably where it comes from a lot for me as well, in a different sort of way. It's not necessarily when things aren't going the way that I expect them to. It's more when my brain is operating in a way that doesn't feel like I'm necessarily in control, or like I have the control over how my brain is currently functioning. And so that's kind of, I think, the main moments when I really need to practice grounding.
Just reflecting on this idea of feeling like you're not in control, I guess, is there more to it than that? Like, really, how much do we control of anything in our lives? Without getting too philosophical, but
I guess that's just the best language I can come up with to describe it, because no, it's not really a sense of me sitting there feeling like, oh, I'm out of control of my brain and whatnot. It's more just feeling maybe a break in connection between my being and the way my brain is functioning. And I use the word untethered to kind of describe the feeling of not feeling like I am fully present in my mind and body and it's all working at the same level. There's this discongruency involved.
Right. And that's uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable, yeah. And sometimes I don't even realize that it's happening. And you'll be like, hey, are you okay? And I'll be like, wow, no, I'm not. Like, I'm feeling a lot of, what is the word? Discongruency? Is that a word? Am I making
Dissonance,
that up?
maybe?
Dissonance. Yeah, I'm feeling a lot of dissonance between my
Physical
internal
and emotional
functioning.
and
Yeah.
psychological states.
Mm-hmm.
As kind of an example, and maybe for people who don't think that they experience like feeling ungrounded, do you think that you could compare this? We've kind of made this comparison in a few other videos, but this comparison to like you've drank too much coffee.
Little bit different. I think the drink too much coffee thing is really good for akathisia, which is like an inner sense of restlessness.
Right.
But when I'm feeling this dissonance or whatever, it's not this I need to jump out of my skin feeling, which I think is what too much coffee feels like, that sense of doom. And that's what akathisia is, the inner restlessness. But when I'm needing grounding and I'm feeling this dissonance within the different operations of my body and whatnot, it is not this like jump out of my skin feeling. It's just an uncomfortable, things aren't lining up feeling. So maybe just for some background information here, context might be important in terms of what I'm describing. I live with schizoaffective disorder. And so I think a lot of this dissonance that I'm feeling comes from symptoms that I experience with that. And so that might be why, well, probably is why our experience of needing grounding comes from different things a little bit, but also kind of the same root feeling.
The not being in control.
Not being in control, dissonance, things not lining up. Yeah.
Right. So, and that leading to being just uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So what would you say for you happens if you don't figure that out? Like, you just continue to be uncomfortable, or do you have this need like, no, I need to figure out how to like ground myself right now?
That's been a learning process. I think for a long time, I would just plow through that discomfort and that feeling and just be like, well, this is my lot in life. I'm just feeling irregulated and uncomfortable, and that's just the way it is. And so that would probably lead to me being more irritable, lead to me being less patient, things like that, because it's not easy to live in discomfort. Obviously, those things are going to spring up and more difficulties are going to be brought forward in your life. But I think I'm learning a lot more as of late how to recognize when I'm feeling like that. And I am trying to accumulate more tools at my disposal to jump to self-regulate and to ground myself.
Right.
Now, the way we've been talking about this, and particularly the way I've been talking about this in relation to my illness, has been a little bit, mild, I guess. Yeah. And just that, sort of feeling of discomfort, and it's coming from things not lining up in my brain and whatnot. But when I'm unwell, and I know for a lot of other people who perhaps struggle more currently with their illness, this can be a lot more impactful, a lot more uncomfortable. And
perhaps not even uncomfortable.
Debilitating.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And so, I think that at any of these stages, it's really important to learn for yourself what sorts of things you can do to ground yourself more and to kind of regain control, regain alignment within yourself.
Right. And so just backing up, kind of acknowledging that like, yeah, there's other mental disorders where this would be a lot more debilitating, things like PTSD or like other dealing with other traumatic things.
Right. And I think that there's a lot more to dealing with trauma.
Yes.
Beyond just, grounding techniques. And so I think I want to keep this discussion to just kind of like the universal experience of needing grounding, not necessarily diving into trauma and that kind of thing. But even people with the same illness as me could experience this to varying degrees.
Right.
And so people will have different experiences with this, but I think that it is kind of universally beneficial, I guess, to have a toolkit at your disposal of things you can do to ground yourself.
Right.
So I'm wondering, what do you do to ground yourself? What's in your toolkit?
Mm. I'm going to be honest that I don't feel like I've done a great job of like developing that toolkit.
Right. You just walk around kind of in that uncomfortable.
Well, no, I think my go-to is to be kind of, uncomfortable, more conflict prone. Oh yeah, more conflict prone. I think that I'm in a stage where I am either having a difficult time identifying it, or probably am sometimes just in denial that I need to like do something about this.
I think part of this reality too is that we have 3 kids. And so it can be difficult to first acknowledge when you're feeling that uncomfortable feeling, and then to give yourself space to do something about it, like, oh, I have to go for a run for half hour to an hour or whatever. Like that's difficult to do given the circumstances of our life. And I'm sure that all people have varying difficult barriers or whatever that pose themselves. But
yeah,
what is beneficial to you when you can do it?
And so just thinking about it from that context, I feel like I'm better able to identify when I'm feeling when I'm feeling grounded, not as a solution to feeling ungrounded. Do you know what I mean? So like you talked about running, like, yeah, after going for like a long run, I mean, part of that I think is like endorphins, but that feeling of just like, okay, like I'm
feeling grounded in your body.
Yeah, exactly.
In your mind.
But not just that. I mean, there's when you're working on a project and you're kind of, or I'm working on a project and I'm kind of like in a flow state, like that feels, I feel really good. I feel really like in line with my physical, my mental, like that kind of thing. Sometimes listening to music. So I think less of the like kind of therapeutic approach and more just, I think, general, I don't know.
What do you mean by therapeutic approach?
Well, I think that like there's a variety of kind of like, okay, do breathing techniques and hold on to ice. And, that if you look up grounding techniques, there's hundreds of them. So kind of, less from this like kind of.
Yeah, honestly, those have never been super effective for me. The breathing, the 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, and working down like that, or, touching a little bit more so. But for me, it's more things within my realm of existence, day-to-day realm of existence. So I think you started this podcast by poking fun at my need to touch you when I'm feeling ungrounded with my feet underneath your legs. And I think that touch is a really, really grounding thing for me. Like another thing that I ask you to do sometimes when I'm feeling untethered or whatever, this misalignment, is to just lay on top of me, because the weight and the touch is really soothing to my being. Or I'll lay on top of you or whatever. Or even just hugging the kids, just a really tight hug can feel really, really grounding in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, in writing some notes for this, I was thinking about how our 2-year-old, when he's ungrounded and you can just tell like he's emotionally dysregulated, he's really upset about something that doesn't really make sense. I feel like if he'll let you like hold him, because sometimes he's just so angry he doesn't want to let you hold him. But if he'll let you hold him, I feel like that is very beneficial for him. He'll calm down relatively quickly.
Yeah, I find it very effective.
Yeah.
Some other ones, well, along the idea of like weight on top of you, I bought a weighted blanket, and when I'm feeling really dysregulated at bedtime, that can be a really helpful tool to just put some weight on me, help me feel safe and a little bit more grounded in my mind and my body and whatnot. Running is one that we talked about. Running is kind of a big part of my life, and it's primarily for that reason. I find it to be a really, really grounding experience. And really kind of any means of moving my body, running just happens to be my favorite means of doing it. But anytime I can exercise, and especially outdoors, it just does wonders for my alignment. Another thing that I struggle with, and we actually have a whole video on the difficulty of showering when you are living with an illness like schizophrenia or even depression or anything like that, that kind of impedes that level of functioning, or, that kind of executive functioning component to tasks like taking a shower and hygiene and whatnot. Something that really helps me, and, I guess to identify what I'm feeling when I'm facing a task like that, is a lot of this like misalignment, untetheredness, not feeling in control of my mind and body and how it's all working together and whatnot. And it feels really, really uncomfortable. And so something that I do is I just kind of blare music in the bathroom, and that helps to just ground me to step by step get through the task without sinking too much into that discomfort. And it helps to just kind of move me through the process and ground me a little bit through it all.
Makes sense. What about, I had kind of talked about, for me, like a process of when I'm in like a flow state, which I guess I'm just thinking now, like that probably comes up with running as well, just being in that kind of flow state. And thinking about like other flow states, what do you think about like people doing art? I know it's kind of ridiculous. Well, not people doing art is ridiculous, but those like coloring books for all ages kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't think it's ridiculous. I think it's something soothing that doesn't take a lot of mental engagement, strenuous mental engagement, that can just help you to connect with something your body is doing in the moment and something you can focus on. And so totally, I think that would be a really effective grounding technique too, if that's something that you enjoy doing. And I think that's probably a really important component here, is to find something that feels good to you.
Yeah.
And so
it's not going to be the same for everybody.
Not everyone is going to feel the same way I do about running. Mm-hmm. But for me, that's something I've identified as being something I really love to do and something that really is effective in grounding me. And so, find what that is for you. And oftentimes it is going to have to do with moving your body in some way, or maybe even connecting with nature, like you were talking about, the literal grounding effects of communing with nature. Mm-hmm. And so perhaps explore some options pertaining to those components. But yeah, find what works for you and what you find to be really, really grounding. And beyond that, I think there's some universal ones too, along the lines of self-care. So taking a shower can be a really, really grounding thing for me to do. And I talked about how hard that can be, which makes it a little bit of a difficult one to achieve. But once I'm showered and I'm ready for the day or the night, whenever I happen to be able to shower, I just feel a lot more present within my body and mind, and the alignment feels more there, and I feel less up in the air, spacey, uncomfortable.
Yeah. I think, and I had talked about kind of water earlier, like swimming out in a lake or the ocean, but maybe you've been swimming a lot more too, like at the gym too. It's probably a similar experience to running, like flow, exercising your body, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
One thing that I've been very weakly experimenting with is like cold showers. Like I can't be like completely under, but like my different parts of my body, I'll like stick under for a little while, like in a cold shower. And I feel like that adds like a different level in terms of just, maybe it's endorphin release, I don't know, but it does feel grounding afterwards. You just get out of the shower and it's a little bit of that same kind of, I just went for a run kind of feeling, even though I didn't go for a run.
That sounds to me like torture and the opposite of grounding. But if that works for you, yeah, I get why that might work for some people.
Yeah.
I think something else that we haven't mentioned yet that I find to be really, really grounding, and that you kind of tediously go along with sometimes, is I'm kind of perpetually asking you to like sit down and have a tea with me or whatever and just talk.
Okay.
And
connecting with other people.
Yeah. And oftentimes I'm not totally aware that it's that I'm needing that grounding component of talking with someone I care deeply about and just kind of experiencing that connection in a grounding way. But that is often what it is. I'm feeling some level of discomfort or incongruency. And so I need to like connect with you in that way.
Yeah.
And that feels really grounding.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think that it doesn't even necessarily need to be you sit down for tea with somebody. I mean, obviously that's great, like one-on-one. But you could call somebody, you could write somebody a letter or a note or something like that. I kind of felt like that the other day. Where you just kind of feel, you feel more connected to them. You feel more
initiating some form of connection with someone else. Yeah. Or with yourself. So,
I think we've identified kind of what grounding is. We've kind of identified what it's like to feel ungrounded. I think, at least for me, where I would see the most benefit is more of a recognition of like when I'm in an ungrounded state and then do these things. But that's kind of where I'm at right now, is I need to like be more aware. So maybe you could point it out then.
I was going to say, would you be receptive to someone pointing it out for you?
Maybe.
Maybe.
It might be a point of conflict. So I have to work on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess that's step one in this process, is figuring out when you're feeling this ungroundedness or this misalignment within yourself. And then I guess figuring out your toolkit of what to do when that happens, and then figuring out how to actually do that. And hopefully that will help address this uncomfortable feeling that I think a lot of people experience day to day, not just people who are living with chronic mental illnesses. The experience may be a bit different for people who are living with chronic mental illness, but I think it's a pretty universal experience, this uncomfortable feeling of misalignment between your mind and your body.
Okay, so this being, I think, a pretty universal experience, we'd love to hear more from you. How do you identify when you're feeling ungrounded? And when you do recognize that you're feeling ungrounded, what do you do to try to ground yourself? You can let us know. Head to our YouTube page and leave a comment under this video.
We also just want to take a minute to remind you all about our online peer support community. In this community, we offer peer support through various text channels as well as weekly peer support groups. And it's a really, really wonderful place to meet and talk with other people who are experiencing similar difficulties or challenges or just life experiences as you, and to feel, a sense of connection in that way. So if that's something that interests you, make sure to check that out. You can find more information at onlinepeersupport.com. Thank you so much for joining us in this episode, and we can't wait to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Is this grounding for you?
Yes.
Like FaceTime.
Yeah. I told you. Touch. And connection.
So I think when people think touch, this is what they think.
No,
like this.
No. That's amateur hour.
Yeah. This is what the pros do.
This is what the pros do.
Yeah, your touch is more in the realm of I want to be physically inside of you.
Inside of you.